All right. So, as always, we're going to finish up here with Behind the Keyboard, where we talk about some stuff in sports media and maybe evaluate it, analyze it, given our highly refined expertise in the sports media industry. There were some humongous sports media broadcasting streaming reports that came out in the last few days. For our viewers, I'm going to put some of them up here for them to go through. But wow. So I'm going to start with the MLB, which I think you guys are aware of. Apple dropping MLB, so I believe that as of 2028, there's going to be no Apple Friday Night Baseball. That is going to be picked up by NBC/Peacock, who is also going to get, per the report, Sunday Night Baseball. ESPN is acquiring MLB TV. So we'll see what happens with that. That's probably going to be rolled up into their, whatever you call it, ESPN Plus or ESPN streaming family. And Netflix is getting the Home Run Derby. So there's a lot to unpack there. The other changes, because we need to follow up, we were talking about the NFL-ESPN deal last week. We're 2 weeks into this, and already ESPN has started making changes to its NFL lineup. Now they dropped the Colin Kaepernick documentary, which is very convenient timing. Ian Rappaport guest hosted a episode of the Pat McAfee Show. Very interesting decision, if you ask me, from a personality standpoint, but it makes a little bit more sense when you consider Rappaport is an NFL insider. So putting him onto a high-profile position in a very popular show makes a lot of sense. And Rich Eisen is going to be coming in and doing a SportsCenter Monday night edition. So there's a lot of stuff that is going on that maybe not a lot of people notice, because in all honesty you won't notice much of it for the next until a couple years down the line, but the wheels were put in motion in a big way for ways that are really going to change the way that people watch the NFL and baseball specifically within the last 4 or 5 days.
I think that's the biggest part. Two that stand out for me are, this even goes back to the UFC deal moving to Paramount, is those bigger streaming money makers that are either season long, maybe more on that side. How does that filter into ESPN? Is that going to be an extra fee at some point? Is people that were paying extra, the 4 months a year for Red Zone, and then the 120 a year I think it was for MLB TV. Where does that filter under an ESPN Plus payment structure? Those are the two biggest things for me that I think get very, very interesting in terms of subscribership moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been happier to pay $250 a month for cable. I'm still gonna be okay because a lot of these have built-in, extensions or apps or whatever for Peacock, for example, is if you have it's all doable, right? And at least I can keep it centrally located. Broadly speaking, though, I don't think this is good for anyone other than the NFL, MLB, and ESPN. And if that's the case, we all lose, because I don't want to sit here and pretend journalism matters in a way that it used to, or is as sexy as maybe it was never sexy, but I get that if you try to go stop a guy on the street and be they killed the Kaepernick doc because ESPN got into bed with the NFL, they'd be I don't really care, man. Can I watch the Patriots this weekend? And I get that, but I think the more of that gets allowed, the worse place we end up in. And even if it's not shining light on bad stuff, it's fine. Here's another way to put it: is you're gonna get inundated with stuff that you don't care about, and you're gonna get more of the lowest common denominator stuff, where it's gonna be that maybe there was that one segment about MLB is a bad example because like ESPN might get that, but like maybe that one segment of baseball that you're gonna get on SportsCenter now is like Stephen A. Smith screaming about the NFL more. It's just that like he's doing it at Ian Rappaport or something. Like, and miss me with like nostalgia over Rich Eisen. Like I don't care about that. These guys are all just like bajillionaire media personalities at this point who aren't bringing the same thing that we think that they're bringing to the table just because it's what we grew up on. Like, and I just think, yeah, the bigger issue in terms of like what you're kind of hitting on, Tim, is like you might get spread even thinner with the streaming stuff that you have to pay for, or like none of these you know entities are doing stuff to make it better for the consumer necessarily. They're doing it to make more money. So like I think you have to view all of that through that lens too. And I think like the desperation that is present with anyone in media or tangentially tied to media is also a factor here too, where it's like we're going to go make our money while we still can because we don't know what's on the other side of this cliff. And like Major League Baseball is in a real weird spot generally speaking because the RSN model on its own is a ticking time bomb, and you've got a lockout coming as well. So it's just there's a ton of moving pieces right now, and I don't think there's really a way that kind of shakes out in a way that is good for the consumer or fan. So that's kind of where I'm at. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that this MLB report came out just a couple days after the Manfred realignment, because my initial thought when Manfred was talking about the geographical realignment, which we can talk about at that length, the short version is I hate it. I want American League, National League till the day I die. But like one of the things that was drawn up was the Northeast division would be Yankees, Red Sox, Phillies, Mets. And to that I was like, so like 90% of fans are going to be in that one division. Like, why are we even going to have another division? What's the desire? But with this ESPN thing coming out, it makes a lot more sense, because if you're ESPN and you just control the entire MLB game ecosystem, you don't really care that all the fans are concentrated in one division, because you're going to get all of them anyway. So like, who cares that there's a Midwestern Central division that nobody is watching, because they're still getting all the Mets and Yankees fans and Phillies fans.
4,700 people show up to game 14 of the year between the Rays and the Marlins. You're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Which is the problem. Like that is the problem, right? Like so I know I bring everything back to golf, but golf hired Brian Rolapp from the NFL. And he had his introductory press conference today, and so he said something that like if he sticks to this, I'll fly to Jupiter or Jacksonville or whatever and kiss him on the mouth. Where he's like, basically he's like his guiding star is like if you make the product good, everything else falls into place behind it, and like it doesn't feel like the NFL or MLB or certainly ESPN are following that with this type of decision, right? Like, I don't think realigning the American and National League in a way that is completely goes against 120 years of history is going to get you to that place. I just don't. I fundamentally don't. And you're making that decision more about money than you are anything else. And I think that's where you kind of get into some trouble. But, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, that becomes the other thing, too. When you redo these, when you realign like that, like what happens to the playoff structure that's already gone through massive changes the last 12, 13 years in about 3 or 4 different ways, especially if you're going to like hurt bigger fan bases, big market fan bases like that. Because realistically, however you decide the playoffs, how many of those 4 teams are going to be able to make it out of that Northeast gauntlet? In doing so, that by beating up on each other with top talent all season long, you're going to have a division winner with like 84 wins, 85 wins, if those teams just kill each other all year. That's where I think for me, it's like, do you hurt bigger markets by putting them in this absolute gauntlet? However the playoffs would shake out in such an alignment, for me, it's just too concentrated, probably the best way.
So somebody who was trying to support it said, yeah, but imagine like if you drew up the postseason a certain way, you could have a Red Sox Yankees World Series. I was like, I don't want that.
No.
I want a Red Sox Yankees American League Championship Series. Like that's not a draw for me personally to see them in the World Series because they're not World Series competitors. They're American League competitors.
What's frustrating too is like they just changed it from like having
Yes.
19 Red Sox Yankees games a season. And this is I'm just touching everything
Great
all
point.
over the board now. Like this is my biggest biggest pet peeve with the NHL. The NHL it like is hurting itself every year with the balanced schedule where you know nobody wants to go pay $400 to sit in the Garden and watch a bad Bruins team play a bad San Jose Sharks team. If you're gonna go pay that money to watch bad teams, give me the Canadiens, give me the Maple Leafs, and like, so I guess that the MLB probably thinks it's going toward that with this, but like you had in my opinion, just a better version of it. Like playing the Yankees 19 times, maybe it does get a little tiring at the end, but like I don't know, at least you're going to crown a better division winner. You're going to get a lot more of the inventory that you covet, and you don't have to waste your time flying the Red Sox to friggin' San Diego for a 3-game series in I guess the Padres, which like on paper looks cool, but like in practice, I don't care. I'm not staying up to watch that. And it's August. Like call me if it's the World Series. Like it's just there's so much of that going on. I can't totally define what I mean by that, but it's just like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of direction other than just like, hey, how can we make a shitload of money? Which, I guess I get. So
Yeah, I mean ESPN is really positioning itself to just I mean it's always been the worldwide leader, but it's going to have the MLB, probably the entire league package. It's got what's moving towards an entire league package in the NHL. It's going to have Red Zone. It's going to have Sunday Ticket. So that's 12 months out of the year. It's it, it's just it's a very interesting evolution in the last 30 years from a network that prided itself on kind of being like an outsider, so to speak. And now it is like almost literally in bed with I don't know what Roger Goodell is doing with Rich Eisen, but like they're in bed with all of the primetime players to the point that like their future is inextricably linked um, to the future of the big four sports.
yeah, they went from a network to a conglomerate, and I mean like they probably were closer to that than we acknowledged for the last 15 years as it was, but like yeah, now there's no doubting it. And like we've been in a building where there's a lot of talk about media rights and negotiations and things like that and where you make money in 2025, and like live sports is the only real thing in which you can get people together at the same time, and so there's so much value in that from an advertising standpoint. Like we saw that on like a much smaller scale at Nesson, right? It's like Ness, there was a guy there whose like main job is to call up every league and podcast and like entity that creates live programming in this that even remotely touches New England sports in the span of a given day, and try to load up a second network to have more inventory. Like it's all about inventory right now. This is just that on steroids because ESPN has more money than God.
I'm so fascinated next year too to see like what kind of launching pad this also comes in. And I'll give them credit for improving the products from when this news first came out years ago of them getting one. But an ESPN Super Bowl next year with all of this going on, I hope that like all these moving parts do not let a Super Bowl get lost and let the quality of the product come back down to earth, because it feels like this has been announced for a while that ESPN was getting a Super Bowl, and I'm happy that we've come from the days of the potential of like Steve Levy and like Lewis Riddick calling this game and like them being on the aggressive and going out and getting Buck and Aikman. But I don't know. I could still see just so much going on. I really wonder what that week looks like for them and what 6 hours of pregame looks like. Is it just going to be McAfee for 3 hours yelling, or I don't know, another like breakdown with Ryan Clark for 2 hours that I don't need. Like I'm so fascinated with what an ESPN Super Bowl is going to look like. I felt that way 3 years ago, and now especially with all the moving pieces, like I really wonder what that's going to look like.
Oh, that's going to be heavily featured during the game, not just before it. He's going to be all over.
Yeah, they'll have one of those like sideline things that they do for the national championship, right? Maybe like that's on the table. I don't know. Or he'll be the kicking expert, or you know,
Move aside Jay Feely.
yeah.